Hey Adventurers, today is going to be our wrap-up for the month of February. I
read 9 books.
9 books? That's pretty good. I think I only read like 7. Listened to several of them, but yeah.
Shall we jump right in?
Go ahead, you have more I think.
Okay. The first book I read was TRESS of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. I listened to this one on audiobook actually, and it's the second Brandon Sanderson I've read this year, so that means 1 per month, which is pretty good, I think.
Yeah.
I liked a lot of aspects of it, and I think it was a really great story. The ending surprised me, and I liked the way the world was built. I feel like there's, just from not having read a lot of his other works, I could have gotten so much more out of it had I. And like, it worked okay as a standalone, but characters like Hoyt and things like that were pretty necessary, and it would have been nice to know how they play into the world in a larger scale. But overall, I liked it. I had one critique about it. Do you remember what it was? Something about
the humor? Writing?
It was like the writing.
The writing style being in Hoyt's voice?
No, it wasn't that. I guess I can't. Yeah, we can just cut that.
I don't remember what.
I had a critique about it, but it's been so long since I've read it now that I can't remember it.
Yeah. The first one that I finished, actually you have it currently. First one that I finished in the month of February was Activated by Nova McBee. This is the 3rd book in the Calculated series. This is the 2nd time I've read it, and now I'm just waiting.
For book 4?
For book 4.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, waiting for book 4. I really like this book. I think Activated is my favorite of the 3, but there's certain things that Simulated book 2 does that I realize I like better than book 3. But I think overall book 3 is my favorite so far.
I also read The Time Machine by H.G. Wells. This was another audiobook I listened to, and it's such a short story that it flew by. And one thing I find with short stories, especially in audiobook form, is that I tend to multitask while I'm listening to audiobooks, and oftentimes I'll be at a point where I can't fully focus on the audiobook, so I'll space out for like a couple seconds or a couple minutes, and then space back in. Is that what you call it? Anyhow, and so you miss that section of the book, which in a long story is not usually a problem because you can fill in the gaps by what's going on. And this was so short that I definitely had to pull out Spark Notes or re-listen to aspects just to make sure I was getting everything. It wasn't my favorite science fiction book I've read, but I liked it as much as, I don't know, it doesn't rank super high for me, but it wasn't, it was just personal enjoyment. It just wasn't high.
So the next one I finished was The Mark of Athena by Rick Riordan. This is the book 3 of his The Heroes of Olympus series, which is the sequel series to Percy Jackson and the Olympians. I think this is probably my favorite book of his that I've read, actually. It's definitely my favorite of the Heroes of Olympus so far during my reread. Maybe after I continue rereading I will like them all better, or like different ones better. But this one, the stakes feel appropriate for the world. The story is well told. Just the characterizations and the way that character storylines are furthered in this book, it feels the most well-rounded of his books, in my opinion.
Okay, so I also read Snow Country by Yasunari Kawabata, and I picked this one up at Barnes & Noble because I thought the cover was beautiful and it intrigued me, and I should know better by now than to pick up random books at Barnes & Noble because they're always so terrible. Anyhow, this one's like a 2-star, 1 or 2-star for me, and so it's a love story, which I don't like in general, like just plain love stories I rarely like, and it's a guy having an affair with a geisha, and I don't like people having affairs when they're married. That's wrong. And so there was just a whole lot about it that I didn't like. It was also very confusing, and it ended really weird. But the reason it gets 2 stars instead of 1 is it made me interested in the culture that it was set in and made me Google some things and learn some things. So it interested me enough in the setting to, I would say better myself, but I'm pretty sure everything else in the book didn't do that. It's probably very wrong of me to say, but I didn't like the book. But it has a lovely cover.
The next one that I finished was, if I can get it up here, The Two Towers by J.R. Tolkien. This is my annual reread of Lord of the Rings. I end the year with The Hobbit in December, and then start the year with The Lord of the Rings. So I'm doing, you know what, I have 4 videos talking, at least 4 videos talking about this book, spread throughout the month of February. Why don't you go watch those if you want to know my thoughts on it as I go. Basically, I really loved it, as always.
I also read Six Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lim, and I also did a review for this, so you guys should check that one out if you haven't already. It was fun when I got to do a craft while I talked about the book.
What have I got? Wizardborn by David Farland. This is book 3 of the Runelord Chronicle, or the Runelords by David Farland. There's not chronicles, but this one was really good. So I have a lot of thoughts on this one. Basically, I didn't like it as much as book 1 or 2, but there was some things that it continues the story-wise, just confusing wording. But it worked really good as that 3rd book in the series, and as continuing building your interest, but also not slowing down as much as middle books often can. What do I really have to say about this one? You know what? I'm not going to say anything more. Eventually I'll have a review for this one, and then you can watch my review. That's the best I can say.
I also read The Midnight Library by Matt Haig, and I love this story. It's about a woman who is dying, and she goes to a place between life and death called the Midnight Library, and she gets to visit all the other potential lives of hers. So all the what ifs, she can visit as many lives as she wants. But as is expected, she's expected to choose a life to go to. And it's very interesting following the character and how she learns and what affects her through these different lives she lives over. I mean, it's fascinating. I love this type of thought process of what if this happened? What if you could try all these different lives? What would it look like? So it was a really amazing book. I thoroughly appreciated the ending. I was concerned about which way it was going to go, and then I was very satisfied with it.
The next one that I finished, and the only physical book that I finished in the month of February, was Aberration by Kathy McCrum. I started and finished it in February, so that's good. I actually made some progress there. I think I'll do a review of this one, and it's in book 1. Okay, so this series, my thoughts are not coming at all tonight. Anyways, this is book 2 of the Children of the Consortium series by Kathy McCrum. Book 1 is Recorder. I really liked Recorder. I really liked Aberration. I have quite a few thoughts on Aberration, and basically it didn't quite happen the way that I was thinking it was going to. And I will probably do a joint review for Recorder and Aberration, because I didn't do a review for Recorder when I first read it, and now it's too late for me just to do one, because I don't think that'll work.
So I also read Activated by Nova McBee. This is the first read through for me. This isn't my reread, as it is T's, but I love this. This is my favorite book in the Calculated series so far, and I'm really excited for book 4. It did definitely tug on my heartstrings, and is probably my favorite, if not one of my favorites, if not my favorite book I've read so far in 2023. I loved it. It was really good. Forever recommending. I think it's just how it goes once you read the Calculated series.
What have I got next? Full Moon by Jim Butcher. This is the second book in the Dresden Files, and I liked some aspects of this. It's fine. I like a lot of the magic. I actually like the character of Harry Dresden quite a bit, but there's just something about the series that's just not like instantly resonating with me, as this is going to be a favorite series of mine. But it was good enough, and it was what I needed at the time, because I was just like in between. I had just finished Two Towers and Wizardborn on audio, and I was like, alright, I need something a little bit lighter, and that's kind of what Full Moon was. So yeah, I'm gonna stop there, and eventually I'll get a review up for that.
I also read Around the World in 80 Days by Jules Verne, And I love this. This is one of my favorite classics I've read in a while. I love that it's more concise. It's not a super drawn out tale and story, as many classics are. They tend to be very lengthy.
Yes.
But following Phileas Fogg travel the world and his friend and
Passepartout.
Passepartout. Yeah, I listened to it on audiobook, and so it was weird, especially seeing it written. Anyhow, it's such a fun story. He travels all around the world, visiting all these different places. It makes me want to travel around the world, and we get to see more about this really odd characters, how we're first introduced to Phileas Fogg, very precise, needing specific things, and then throughout the story we're seeing the type of gentleman he is, and how he's very heroic, and he isn't just focused on achieving his goals. He's not as selfish as people pegged him to be initially. And it was such a fun book to read, and I love it. It's one of my favorite classics now. The ending is great too.
The next one that I finished was The Time Machine. Very short novel, as Kate already mentioned. I actually really liked it. From the 2 books of H.G. Wells' that I've read, I really like H.G. Wells. The first one being the War of the Worlds, which I need to reread. But the second one, The Time Machine, is very, very good as well. It's a short tale. It's kind of unsatisfying in some ways because you don't get the answers that you want in many ways. But the way that he tells the story, it works so well for me, and I'm finding that I like this more concept-driven sci-fi, where it can be confusing. You don't have to end up. The story doesn't have to end in a completely satisfying place, or wrap up everything in a nice, neat bow. It just is able to tell the story, and I like that. So this one was. I definitely like The Time Machine. I don't. Probably more than Kate did.
I also read More Than a Gunslinger, More Than Human novel by J.R. Carroll. T mentioned this last month. Yeah. He read it last month, and I was really intrigued. I think the cover is beautiful, and it sounded really, really fascinating. I was very curious about it. And I had some different feelings going through it. I was excited. I had heard that it had a lot of American tall tales incorporated into it, which I was excited to see. And there were. I wasn't disappointed by that. I didn't like the author's writing style particularly, because I felt like it wasn't refined enough. I think he had a really great story and so much potential, and I think that the way his story turned about, especially the ending, which was really fantastic, it was good, but the writing style was very passive, to the point where it lost my interest, and I was like, it's an audiobook. I was listening to an audiobook, and I really didn't think it should be that passive, which of course is a personal opinion. But the ending was fantastic. I loved seeing the different American tall tales pulled in here, and different fantasy creatures too. It was really fun and very abstract and surprising. You start off and you think it's just your normal Western book, as normal as it can be with the setting, and it just gets more and more wild.
And what's the last one? The last one that I finished is Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. This one, I both knew exactly what to expect from it and didn't know at all.
Wasn't it lovely?
It's so much fun. It's just like, okay, we're just gonna go into a dream now and follow her as she. It's literally like a dream the entire time, and you're just like, okay, now this is changing and it's random, and the next thing's gonna happen, and I don't know how we got here, but okay, we're just going with it.
It's so good.
And yeah, it's very, very fun, and I'm very glad to have finally read it, because it's one that I have needed to read for all of my life and just have, for some reason, never read it. I will undoubtedly read it again at some point. The one thing that I will say is that people make all these references to it and quote lines from it and everything, and I feel like people overuse it a little bit. I feel like there's other things that could be drawn from the story, or other aspects of the book that could be pulled at for quoting and stuff like that.
And now you can, because you've read it.
Now, yeah, I'll have to read it a couple more times probably before then. But I did very much enjoy it.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Okay, the last book I read was The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. This is just a classic I heard the title of, and I decided I needed to read it. And it was a little bit odd. It was very much, it was a type of story that really made me think about certain aspects of life and selfishness and beauty and humanity and how they all tied in. Overall, it wasn't like a nice book to read at all. It didn't make you feel good. It didn't make you excited for the character because he was doing things that were wrong and he was condoning them, and you were watching this progression and this deterioration of his humanity and of him as a person growing more and more morally gray while having this whole face. And it's a really interesting comparison, and I see why it's renowned as a classic. It was definitely not one of the books that I just loved, that I really wanted to read, but it did make me think a lot, and I appreciate that in the story. So I don't regret reading it.
I think we both had a pretty wide variety of things that we read this month.
I'm excited to see what March is like.
Let's see, I've got two, let's see, why can't I think? Well, first off, I've got 2 sci-fi, I've got 2 low fantasy, 2 high fantasy, and 2 classics.
I had
That's pretty good.
a Brandon Sanderson. I had 1, 2, 3 classics.
Yeah.
And I had, just some other random ones. Contemporary, 1 fantasy.
It's a pretty good mix for both of us.
Yeah.
For sure. So, anyways, that was our wrap up for the month of February. Thank you guys for watching an Erudite Adventure. We post videos every Monday and Thursday and have our social medias linked in the description down below. We will see you guys again soon. Stay well.